Hey guys, what's up? So we're talking about older video games today. And when I mean older games, I don't mean something that was made in 2012 or even 2009. We're talking about something that's at least about 10 years old because, there's a lot of elitists out there that consider something, oh my god, something from 2012, it looks so bad, the graphics are outdated. No, that's not really old. That's just, it's aged a little bit, but it still needs to be at least a generation behind. Although some people would argue, we're in the PS4 land, and that was when PS3 land was around in 2012, and that was a generation. And I'd argue, we still really haven't had a real generation shift. It's more like a 2.1 version of the last generation. But 10 years is a good sort of time frame. So, there's a lot of great gems out there in the older market that people often overlook. Everyone was really focused on the new shiny great things, but a lot of great stuff out there from the past that people have missed, I think, and overlooked, because they're so focused on the new stuff, right? So first of all, older games are a lot cheaper, or they're even free. So you can go on Abandonware, be able to get some of these older games like the Sierra Classics and use something like Defend Reloaded and be able to get this for free. Or you can get a prepackaged version on GOG.com. From there, get a nice plug and play with everything set up with DOSBox, everything ready to go. And most of this stuff is sub $10, $5, $2, stuff that less than what you would spend on a night on town for hours and hours of gameplay, right? So the financial cost is very, very, very little. It doesn't require you to go spend a whole whack of money on your system. Chances are any laptop or any general computer can run most of the stuff here. So it's great. You're not breaking the bank. Financially, it's feasible for pretty much anyone that has a modern computer and has a couple bucks with them, right? Reason number 2, they are tried and true classics. People talk about these games. People love these games. People have nostalgic moments. It has an established track record that you'd know why you'd like it and be very clear on that and why you wouldn't like it, right? These are not reviews where things are sort of in flux. Hindsight's 2020. Enough time has passed. If it's still considered one of the best RPGs of that time, those reasons are very, very clear, right? It's not something that just a couple months people talk about, okay, this could be game of the year, this is the reason why, and when you look in the long run, it wasn't very great, whatever, right? It hasn't stuck out from, the test of time yet, but, a game that's a classic, that's it sticks out for a reason. People know those reasons why, and you can still talk about these games. There's still plenty of people who love to be nostalgic about certain games that they love and talk about them and just reminisce in the memories. So they're tried and true classics. You know what you're getting. You know why you'd like it, why you wouldn't like it. Number 3, the artwork can be awesome. Now, I think there's a big difference between artwork and graphics people don't distinguish. Now, when I think about graphics, I mean, I'm not being technical in its definition here, but graphics, in my mind, really means it's the ability to imitate realism, right? That ability to imitate and how close it can be to looking realistic, right? Whereas the artwork is just making use of the technology as is and trying to use the visuals well, the themes that are used, the artwork style, and for the most part, a lot of games still had great artwork back then. Sure, you might see a bit of pixelation, but you see a great artwork style and a really good concentrated effort to work with the technology as best as possible. You take a game like Ultima 7, which is old. It was made in back in the early 90s. You can see it with a DOSBox version that the resolution's not so great, but the actual artwork style is still fantastic. It still looks great, still looks colorful. You can even take that and load it into the Exalt engine, which allows you to up the resolution, with that, and so it's not as much a factor, and it looks fantastic. Unless you're really superficial, just about eye candy, you have to differentiate between artwork and graphics. Artwork style, and I think is there was a lot of effort put into it, and a lot of stuff can still look pretty good. If you just keep in context, what it was. Number 4, music and audio hasn't really changed that much. Like once you get past the 2000s, you've gone past clunky Nintendo sounds. Most games, would be voice acted if they should be voice acted. So, for the most part, it's really graphics that has evolved. Graphics has been the main thing that's continued to evolve. But music and audio hasn't really, changed, and that's on par. So, you still got a lot of great music and, musical scores, music that's been professionally composed. And even to a certain degree, sometimes they actually put more effort into that because, back then, they were trying to, experiment a little bit more, say, okay, let's get a professional score made and written because we know it's not just something we're going to produce fast and go on to the next one. So stuff like that, like you take the old Wing Commander series and stuff like that. They got, they're breaking new grounds with getting a, real professional score going and all that sort of those fine details. So, music, has been relatively the same. It's just really graphics that has been the thing that's been different. Number 5, old games. I think the older style games can age better, right? Particularly if they're not really utilizing 3D technology. Like you look at a game, even though Morrowind is an older game, but it looks pretty rotten right now because it was a 3D game and it was meant to imitate reality and be realistic, right? And now it looks like a cheesy imitation of reality. Don't get me wrong, Morrowind's a great game, and for its time, its graphics were amazing. I remember people talking about it and be like, wow, you have those water reflections. But now it just looks, because it's trying to imitate reality, it looks like a cheaper imitation of reality. Where particularly if you have, 2D games, for instance, they're not trying to imitate reality. They're just, doing what they can do best on the 2D plane, right? So you look at a game like Super Mario 3, which is super old, it still looks pretty good. It doesn't look like it's out of place for its time, right? So, they can age better, particularly if they're 2D, right? So yeah, it's a lot of 3D games, like even the 3D games I think we play today, probably another 5 or 6 years from now, we're gonna look at them and be like, the textures are not as full, the models are not as full. Even if you look at a 3D game from say 2004, which 3D was decently developed back then, and we've had it for a number of years, but it's going to look a little outdated, right? Reason number 6. So, this sort of relates to the last part where we're talking about 2D games, but, playing a 2D game, which a lot of the older games can be, is a lot like reading a book. And the reason why I say that is because sometimes people say, reading a book is better than watching the movie. Because, in my opinion, when you read a book, you fill in the blanks with the imagery, and you form your own mental imagery about given scenes and things like that, right? So with playing a 2D game, because again it doesn't imitate reality well, your brain sort of fills in the blanks. The character on the screen is just a symbol, whereas 3D really spells it out for you, and you can't have a different interpretation of the world in a way. And so in a way, to me, the 2D game is like your brain is not interpreting it as full reality, so your brain sort of fills it in the blanks, a bit of the gap with that, right? So I think the enjoyment with 2D games, which you'll find more so in older games, is definitely like kind of like that effect of reading a book. So those are some reasons, I think, just to take a look at older games. I think that there's a lot of great value games out there that are not being that are not being looked at. And really over time, the biggest thing that's really changed from one generation to the next has been graphics. And graphics don't make a good game. I am sorry. Like, it gets you initially interested, and you do have your moment of, wow, look at those graphics, but you forget about it, right? You forget about it eventually. If a couple of years from now that something else comes out with a greater level of superficiality with just good graphics and eye candy, right? And even back then, like back in the 90s, early 2000s, there was those share of games that had good, amazing graphics for the time, and I don't remember any of them, but I remember the ones with great gameplay. And the gameplay on most of these games, is still really, really fun, and if not better. You take a game like Super Mario 3, it has such an attention to detail to every little thing that that is done to it, every area that you if you jump half an inch off, you might miss this area and go off into another segment of the game. All that attention to detail was just very, very finely honed. So, it's really graphics has been the area that improves. And, there's some hipsters out there who are all about the graphics. And, hey, if that's what you like, that's great. But, maybe you should be watching an animation movie with really good graphics instead of playing games. Games to me is about interaction, and the level of interaction, all that sort of stuff, for the most part, hasn't changed that much. You have other things like, online gaming and all that sort of stuff, but still, it's mainly been graphics that has been the main defining thing. So, I think more people should play some of the older games. I'm going to try to encourage it on this channel, obviously reviewing both new and old games as well. And also independent games and things that people are not looking at, but there's lots of gems out there that are, that are getting overlooked and that they need some love. So check them out.
Hello, Gandu.